We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a fi we, we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a fi we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Billy City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Billy City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because to no Guatemala. This a we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Billy City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a fi we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a fi we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Billy City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a fi we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a fi we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me.
And good morning and welcome to Sunday Review, where we make sense of the news, the only news review talk show in Belize from back at the zinc fence, sweet Southside Belize City. I'm the producer and host, Sister YaYa Marin Coleman. We are live on XTV Belize, simulcasting on Creme Radio, live streaming on XTV Belize YouTube and XTV Belize Facebook. And we'll make sense of the news this morning. We have our co-host and guest on screen. Brother Mutota is the co-host, and our guest is Brother Alister Thomas. According to Brother Akko, he is an iconic figure from Antigua. I said the islands are twin islands, Antigua and Barbuda. So good morning, brothers. Talk to me, Brother Akko.
Good morning, Sister YaYa. Good morning to Brother Alister, and good morning to our invited guests, our listening guests this morning. Welcome to everyone and happy emancipation.
Respect. Brother Alister, good morning. What's the weather like in Antigua this morning?
That is one of the reasons that good morning to your listeners and good morning to my brother Mutota and to you, sister, and to all the Belizeans, and to all your listeners wherever and viewers, if that's what we are covering. The reason I'm having this interview in my car is because of the humidity, being very humid and very hot, and so my AC at home is not in place, and so I have no other choice.
Yeah.
So Antigua is very, very hot, and it's carnival time, and time that we create and we produce creative expressions of people that period of the year.
Respect. Even though we're melanated sun people, we have one tolerance level for heat. We're going to start off. This is the second month that we're doing this format. Usually on most Sunday mornings, we have half an hour or so of Brother Mutota sharing news from different Caribbean countries and then or islands, and then he would analyze it. But starting last month, the first Sunday of every month going forward, where I spend the whole hour and a half diving into Caribbean news and bringing a guest who would be knowledgeable to have that depth of conversation. Now, Brother Akko, Tell the listeners, viewers, and live streamers who Brother Alister is, so they can get a sense that heavyweight they are. I could carry this conversation this morning.
Well, Brother Alister is a very, what I call iconic figure from the Twin Island nation of Antigua and Barbuda. He's an Antiguan. I first heard about him in the revolutionary movement when he was a member of what is called the ACLM, which was called the Afro-Caribbean Liberation Movement at first, and then later on became the Antigua Caribbean Liberation Movement, led by a legendary figure, the late Tim Hector. Brother Alister has since evolved into a cultural icon. He's a political figure in St. Vincent, very much an activist in various sectors, including the education system. And that is just a brief introduction, but he can speak more about himself, which I'm sure he may not want to. But the word iconic is very much fitting to describe Brother Alister Thomas from Antigua.
Well, Brother Alister, you know I going, you're highly recommended, Brother Akko says so, but I still got the research by you. And somebody say, you're a known YaYa bender, and just now we talk about carnival. What now YaYa bender?
Ask that again, sister.
What is a YaYa bender?
I didn't get. Basically, traditionally, they have now transitioned into more imported mass, but the fundamental construction of mass costume, particularly the bigger costume that you wear in your back, or king and queen of the bands, and those kind of junior carnivals, the major construction of it is based on wire bending, forming, shaping, sculpturing, whatever your concept is. So that is a speciality area of craftsmanship, very specialized. There are very few remaining in Trinidad or wherever, and I happen to be a part of those. That you not only have the decorators, the finishers, but the major part of it is like the foundation, is the sculpturing, creating the fundamental base of anything else you're going to build on or finish or present as your conception. So that's the area when they say wire bender, but not just a wire bender. I'm complete. I'm a designer, wire bender, band leader for over 48 years.
Good,
having won all of the prizes in Carnival in Antigua, called Band of the Year, Junior, Seniors, all the different Prince, Princess, King and Queen of the Bands, Carnival Queen. So I'm just, and this year I'm doing a special piece, just one costume. We, they, we, us, middle passage, Jesus of Lubeck. And so that's the theme I'm working on. I'm a little behind, and it's for Tuesday parade coming. And it's revisiting, reliving, recreating that hellish experience where all of us, before we were Belizeans and Trinidadians and Guyanese and Antiguans and Barbudans and Bermudians, when we are one people being enchained in that hull of that ship. And you know of the Jesus of Lubeck, which was one of the first ships captained by Sir John Hawkins, that slave trader, being leased to and in joint business ownership with Queen Elizabeth I. And so I'm featuring that concept of capturing that experience of all of us when we were journeying across the Americas as Africans. When they then landed us at the ports, be it in Brazil or wherever, then we became something else. But we were all enchained, enslaved on the journey to hell. So that's what I'm working on. The middle passage, they, us, we.
I really appreciate that input. And we will get to the Caribbean news analysis. We just recognized in the English-speaking Caribbean, August 1st, as African Emancipation Day, of when our enslaved foreparents get the liberation from physical and chattel enslavement as propertied people. Now, when you look across the Caribbean, oftentimes African, and then I even say African Emancipation Day, so you don't even know who the people are who got emancipation. It's just Emancipation Day. UF is starting a campaign this year for it to be renamed in Belize African Emancipation Day. But oftentimes at Carnival, about
Great.
bashment, oftentimes people don't make the connection between the historical African significance, relevance of Carnival. Is there any space for that in Carnival, Brother Akko, Brother Alister, where there's a consciousness raising? I know there's an absence for it for African Emancipation Day for the most part, but with Carnival, is there any consciousness raising to make the connection between Carnival and our stories that make Carnival still relevant in 2025? Brother Alister, you then, Brother Akko.
It has been the major thrust and inspiration of my work over the 48 years. Featuring our African lineage history, the history of humankind. And as I said, this year presentation is capturing that which we forget, because the mundane and the lewd and the preoccupation with having a frenzy is being disconnected from the relevance of not only emancipation, of the reality of our experience. It's like Carnival is not now represent the creative expression and the history of our struggle. It is commercialized and, you know, it's parties fed. Yes, I have no problem with monetizing it, but we should never have lost, especially the descendants of the enslaved Africans. And that's the reason the presentation this year. It's saying to them, yes, in all party funds, in all this vibe, in all this readiness of anatomical exposition, you know, showing the anatomy and having this exhibition, you would not hear, or only hear because our ancestors were brought in us. And how can we have forgot them, experiencing the worst atrocity for over 400 years? And they've been able to distract you in just feeling all that you need to do is imbibe, to drink, to drunk, to be as naked as you can be. And nothing wrong with that, our tribal history. But with no consciousness, with no activity, get all intoxicated and in that frenzy, but no consciousness of the past, the ancestors, the suffering, the barbarism that they experience. And because of them, is because of you, because there will be no Caribbean people except for the indigenous people, which they also wipe away, and some with disease, the Kalinagos and the Siboneyes and Carib and Arawak. And so this piece is that, to say to them, yes, in the middle of what you are doing, I am saying to you, remember, you would not have been here had it not been for our ancestors who were brought in chains on this ship that should have been, because of its name, Salvation. You enter this ship and we're taking you into salvation, and really it's the bondage and servitude. And so that they, us, we, opening the ship on the street and saying, look in here, while you're dancing in this frenzy, why they've been able to distract you. One of the reasons why they've now come back to recolonize you with Black leadership collaborating is because you've lost this root, this connectivity, that if you paid homage and respect of the suffering of our ancestors, you would be enjoying yourself, but consciously trying to ensure that you advance in ownership, in possession, and that you would not want to see a shadow of re-enslavement and re-colonization. And that's where we are, recolonization, enslavement, primarily because most of the nationalist governments whose only preoccupation is to attain power or maintain power. And they can always, as our leader here said, he gets power for creative enrichment. Creative, I don't know how you can represent in the people and the legacy and the history of building a new society and creating a new society on the background that the enslavers have not yet accepted slavery as a crime against humanity, have not yet apologized, and more so to speak of reparation. And as you say about conscious mass, a few years ago I produced a mass when eventually after on my program, Caribbean into 21st Century radio program, here in ZDK, been hammering the CARICOM leaders to say, how could you not have reparation as an agenda item a long time ago. So when they came on board that year, I presented a mass called Reparatory Dawn. Eventually, they come ahead, the dawn of reparation, the debts, the cancellation of debts, and all those are names of sections. So my consciousness of who we are, where we came from, has always been a part of my presentation and mass.
Big respect, brother. Big respect. Brother Ako?
Well, yes, there were very much political and conscious activity during Carnival. But in the last couple of decades, that has receded. I think the high point of it was the 1970s, which preceded what was called, the 1960s, which preceded the Black Power movement, and also the 1970s, which came after what was called the Black Power Revolution. So there was a lot of political and African-centered mass in Trinidad for a very, very long time. Now, similarly to what is happening in Antigua, we have all this debauchery and nakedness and so on. And to take up a point that Alister made, there is nothing wrong in merriment. In fact, there is a lot of historical evidence to suggest that the famous quote, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die," comes from the ancient people of Kemet. But what they did, according to some of the historical documents, that when they had their big feast, just before the feast, a ritual elder or a priest would come and do a ritual, and sometimes with that ritual, he would have a miniature coffin, the thing that we were buried in. And he would pass and do this ritual, reminding you that while you enjoy yourself, you make merriment, you have a moral and a responsibility, you have a spiritual responsibility, and you don't go to the extreme. But I think when you look at Carnival now, it has been unmoored or disassociated from its historical context and the idea of freedom that it represents. So we need to return to the historical moorings of Carnival through our own African history and our own African spirituality. So there is nothing wrong with enjoyment and merriment, but it must be done in a context that maintains our morality and our spirituality and our sense of self and also our history.
Go ahead and start with the Caribbean news, Brother Ako. I never expect to take so long to get to it.
So, because emancipation was just a couple of days ago, we are going to look at a piece coming out of St. Vincent, and I know Brother Alister would be keen to comment on this. It's an article in one of the newspapers, and the headline is "Shadows of Freedom. Caribbean grapples with the unfinished business of emancipation." And this was done on Emancipation Day. And it begins, the subheading is, "Despite formal independence, economic and cultural chains still bind many Caribbean nations." It's divided into 4 sections. One section is a legacy of chains from chattel slavery to economic dependence. The other one is cultural imperialism, the erosion of identity. And the other one is the psychological scars of slavery, a legacy of trauma. And the final one is pathways to a true emancipation, and it lists economic diversification, educational reform, cultural preservation, reparations, and mental health support. So I'll read parts of it, and then we'll open it for the discussion with Brother Alister. And it says, August 1st marks Emancipation Day across many Caribbean nations, a day to commemorate the abolition of slavery in the British Empire in 1834. Celebrations abound, filled with vibrant cultural expressions, historical reenactments, and reflections on the arduous journey toward freedom. Yet, behind the jubilant facade lies a persistent truth from many Caribbean islands. Emancipation remains an incomplete project. While legal shackles are long gone, economic dependency, cultural imperialism, and the lingering psychological effects of slavery continue to cast long shadows. The formal abolition of slavery was a watershed moment ending centuries of brutal exploitation. However, it left newly freed people with little to no resources, land, or opportunities. The planter class compensated handsomely for the loss of their property, in quote, retained economic and political power. This imbalance laid the foundation for a new form of control, one rooted in economic dependence. Emancipation was a necessary but insufficient condition for true freedom, stated Dr. Hilary Beckles. The freed people were thrown into a world without capital, without access to land, and without the tools to compete effectively. This created a cycle of poverty and dependence that continues to affect the region today. Many Caribbean economies remain heavily reliant on tourism and foreign aid, making them vulnerable to external shocks and global economic trends. This dependence limits their ability to pursue independent development strategies and perpetuate a neo-colonial relationship with the former imperial powers. According to the World Bank, several Caribbean nations rank among the most indebted countries in the world, further restricting their economic sovereignty. Beyond economic challenges, cultural imperialism poses a significant threat to the true emancipation of Caribbean societies. The dominance of Western media, education systems, and cultural norms often overshadow and marginalizes local traditions and expressions. This can lead to a sense of cultural inferiority and a weakening of national identity. We have to actively decolonize our mind, states Professor Carolyn Cooper, Jamaican cultural studies professor. For too long, we have been taught to value Western culture above our own. Emancipation requires us to reclaim our heritage, celebrate our creativity, and build societies that reflect our unique experiences and aspirations. And I will stop here because I think it's enough to start a discussion because of the many other items we have to. So that is where I will stop at this point in time. So, hello?
Brother, thanks, Brother Akko. Brother Alister, we have another 7 minutes before the first break. Is it 7? No, another 10 minutes. What's your take on what Brother Akko just shared?
A quick question. What's the name of the writer, Brother Akko?
I don't remember the name. I think it's an opinion piece in a paper.
Okay, fine, no problem. Yeah. Let me begin this way. I think it's a fine piece, and it's a piece that should be circulated among the population of the Caribbean, and many more pieces, but dealing specifically with this most recent piece. I don't know where to start, because it's a subject which Brother Akko know that I'm very sensitive. I've written things about it. I've done many commentary. But let me see where it starts to give credence and life to this wonderful piece of more or less asking us to examine our state of affairs at Emancipation Day. I want to begin this way, a way that I've always begun, that emancipation for me was an economic, political convenience. It was never what we were made to celebrate, because more often than not, as post-colonial victims, or post-colonial victims, they always give us a script, and we always narrate it, and never seem to want to analyze it. What was this emancipation in 1834? What was it? We're in slavery and bondage for centuries, and experienced the worst atrocity of humankind. Your identity, your language, your place of origin, everything about it was being erased, more or less. You're being punished for any connectivity, cultural connectivity, be it in your song, your music, your instruments, band, and your language. So we got this thing in 1834, and what is it that they gave us? Why? It was for economic purposes. They recognized that it was cheaper, more economical, more economically feasible, and that is they would generate greater profit, the plantation owners and those who had interest and investment in slavery and the plantation industry and the economic offspring or benefits of slavery. That is, they had to provide shelter, clothing, and food for the enslaved Africa. But when on this 1834, what they had worked out, looking at the what we call it, the economic returns, the multiply effect, they recognized that there would be a greater saving by not providing food, shelter, and clothing. That is, you can still have our ancestral parents enslaved, they're providing these things now, but we still benefit. So the emancipation was nothing anything to do about any emancipation from bondage and servitude. It was an economic and fiscal decision, and I'm surprised that most of the scholars and academics in the Caribbean have not recognized that. We will be perpetuating a continuation of falsehood. So from the beginning, we were not really made to be free. Yes, the chattel slave, the chains around your feet might have been removed, but the chains on your head, the religion, the education was still there, and you still carried out the slave labor, provided the slave labor would generate the capital. Now we move on to what happened after that. They did not prepare us in any way. They did not acknowledge they had a responsibility if you're going to free these people who had in bondage and servitude, to let them go without the obligation of providing the new society a new life. No, they did not. So they did not provide the foundation. So they let us go in something called association with Britain, half pregnant and half, half pregnant, half pregnancy. So we're half free in this supposedly emancipation, but yet we're still control of foreign policy or military or everything, or controlled by them under the statehood. Then we merge at the state something called independence. And again, for me, the academics and the scholars of the Caribbean, I don't want to call them intellectuals, failed us in many ways. Let the Caribbean people generation to believe that we had obtained something called independence. It's not true. Let me give suffice with the facts. And to have these scholarships be instilled, nurtured in students in universities are just so misleading. That's why we're where we are. How could we have obtained independence, like in Antigua example, and the major document that says we end the past of servitude, of bondage, and we are now free people, we are our own masters. And the most significant document that should go on, should exist in perpetuity, indefinitely, the Constitution. What does our Constitution say? This new independent document, these free people now, free at last. Thank God we are free at last, dear God. What freedom did we have? Why did the academic and the politician and those who seek independence mislead the Caribbean? Our Constitution reads, we pledge our allegiance, our leaders and all those who are supposed to be chartering and managing this new life, this new freedom of independence. We are all masters, lies. We swear our allegiance to Her Majesty, in that time is Queen Elizabeth, now is King Charles, and her successors and heirs in perpetuity. That's what it is, indefinitely, and heirs. Not only that these new free people in their new independence, charter of freedom, emancipation, liberation, enshrined in it from day one, an allegiance, a continuation of colonialism enshrined in this new free document. And on almost every island of the Caribbean had that. So that I'm saying from that beginning, it was deception. We never obtained independence. How can you be independent? How can we be speaking of independence? And this new document of freedom, emancipation, the shackles gone. We are in control of our destiny. We decide, we dictate. But yet, we swear, these new freed people, in this new freedom, our allegiance, not for a year, not for 2 years, not for 3 years, but we swear our allegiance to Her Majesty, her successors and heirs indefinitely while they're in control. It was from that beginning that we betrayed any semblance of any genuine independence. We never had it. So that's the struggle. And then they gave us a political system that in perpetuity, except we transform it, and all the academic area we have had, and all the universities, with all these fine thinkers. We have never designed a system to say, look, with this two-party, bicameral, Western democracy system, opposition and government, we will be in this divisive cycle in perpetuity. Opposition and government, when you're in government, you punish those outside. So we never got reparation. We never got developmental fund. We obtained supposedly this new constitution, this new independence document of freedom, but we swear our allegiance from day one to the slave holders, slave masters. That contradiction is what we're experiencing. So that looking at what is being written in this particular piece of this self-government, what is this self-government? What did we obtain? Look at every island of the Caribbean today. Be those who are based on tourism economy. They are gasping for breath. They are asphyxiating. With billions of dollars coming through the economy through this, let's take the tourism plan. We are not enjoying $1 as the independent, supposedly independent people, the islanders, the people of the Caribbean, whose home or property in which this tourism. But the people who comes in, the cruise liners, the airline, the hotel operators, with 98% are the absentee owners as it was in plantation. What ownership do we have of this tourism industry? We have to find line items every year, tax the citizenry, give concessions to the so-called investors and developers, which are just mockery, new slave owners, to generate profit while we tax our citizens to provide the infrastructure, to do the dredging, to build the harbors, to do the roads, and get some menial job. Look at the management structure, the ownership structure, and I must give compliment to people like Stewart, Jamaican. There are how many other models we can point to that's become not only a influential economic ownership of the tourism industry. What else have we produced? What have this academia and these scholarships have done to really create genuine independence ownership? We are less being owners today than 40 years ago. We are more dispossessed because of the so-called model of development and investment. Who designed those? Where are the countermeasures from our brilliant minds? Where are the evidence that we have brilliant minds in the Caribbean when our economy and our lives at a survival desperate level, and 80% of the population is living, they're eking out a living, but other people are walking over with super profits.
Big
emancipation?
Big respect. That's a lot of truth. We have to take our first break. Stay tuned to Sunday Review. Our guest is Brother Alister Thomas, Antiguan iconic figure, and co-host from the Twin Islands of Trinidad and Tobago, Brother Mutota. Break time. We'll be right back.
Make every moment matter with your credit card. More transactions, more chances to win cash back. You can be one of 4 monthly winners. Get a chance to win cash back with every purchase of $100 or more. For more information, visit www.atlabank.com. Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
On July 10th, 2025, Belize Electricity Limited and Blair Atoll Power Company Limited signed a historic power purchase agreement for the development of a 15-megawatt utility-scale solar plant, complete with a 1.5 megawatt, 3 megawatt-hour battery storage system. This project represents a significant milestone in building a cleaner, more sustainable, and resilient electricity grid.
Today's signing is the furthest we have ever come down the road of realizing the needed facilities and our own ambitions for harnessing the power of the sun. This PPA provides a model in which everybody, BEL, Babcock, and consumers win, and that is how it should be. We have every confidence that Babcock can and will bring this project home, and BEL publicly offers whatever support it can to realize this goal.
What we learn here will set the foundation for future projects, including solar, wind, hybrid systems, and even other emerging developing technologies, renewable energy technologies, that Belize will need if we are going to remain competitive and resilient.
BEL and Babcock will collaborate closely to develop and commission the plant within 12 to 18 months from the start of construction. Once operational, the solar plant will supply clean, renewable energy directly to the national grid, strengthening Belize's energy security and diversifying our national energy mix.
Oh man, one more scroll and my data is done.
Wait, who said anything about running out? Smart just dropped a more powerful plan that now includes social media data, so you can scroll till your fingers cramp. Visit any Smart showroom to sign up today because connectivity just got even better. Smart, bringing people together.
The hurricane season is here. Are you prepared? Get the essentials you need to stay safe this hurricane season, such as plywood, tarp and rope, first aid kit, rubber boots, raincoats and rain ponchos, generator, portable radio and batteries, flashlight and kerosene lanterns. Weather the storm with these products and more from Benny's. Quality and savings.
Guatemala, Guatemala, this time we have the nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pufa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master, talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland will never give it up to another nation. This time we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time.
Welcome back to Sunday Review. Sister YaYa, Sister Brother Akko, and Brother Alister. And we're dissecting, diving in, tearing apart news from the Caribbean. Brother Alister just give one comprehensive mouthful of truth as it relates to African emancipation being a process, the no one done deal. We're still enslaved. Like we're African foreparents gone from being physically shackled and not looked at as property to enslaved wage earners, a minimum wage with the talk about, with quality of life now greatly improved. And especially the mental enslavement, in particular when it comes to white Jesus. One of the biggest factor of with continuous mental enslavement. Brother Akko, next Caribbean story.
So the next piece of news comes from Trinidad and Tobago. And the headline is, "A name is a powerful thing." And when I read this piece, you will see the contradiction therein. So "a name is a powerful thing" is the headline. And it says, Port of Spain reclaims history on emancipation. And that is the contradiction, Port of Spain. This is the capital of Trinidad. And the news begins with, Port of Spain Mayor Chinua Allen yesterday announced that the city corporation will remove the statue of Christopher Columbus from Independence Square and rename a portion of Oxford Street after Pan-African icon Kwame Ture. Allen made the announcement before a crowd of hundreds in downtown Port of Spain outside the Treasury building during African Emancipation Day celebrations dubbed Freedom Morning come play. Among those present were the President Christine Kangaloo and her husband, and the Minister of Culture and Community Development, Michelle Benjamin. According to Allen, the removal of the statue marks a significant turn in the city's commitment to restoration and repair to drive the process of emancipation. For that reason, the Council of the City of Port of Spain has taken the decision to remove the statue of Christopher Columbus from Independence Square and to make it available to the National Museum. The Columbus statue, a fixture at Marin Square for more than 140 years, was gifted in 1880 by Hippolyte Borde, a wealthy cocoa planter and merchant from Martinique. Allen said, while the statue would be preserved for historical education, the square itself would be repurposed. We have taken the decision to establish a committee to recommend to the council a new name for the square in honor of all the victims of the genocide of indigenous peoples, the transatlantic slave trade, and colonialism. He also announced the formation for a youth-led artist collective that will be tasked with designing a new monument for the square. The project is part of a wider effort to ensure future generations grow up with a deeper understanding of the country's true history. So I will end there and have Brother Alister comment on that piece of news. The renaming of a street after Kwame Ture and the removal of the Columbus statue.
Brother Alister.
Two things. First, let me say, yes, two things. Let me say that yes. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yes. Two things. I am not distracted by the diversion. But let me say this, it would be of me not to acknowledge the tremendous work, sacrifice that Brother Kwame Ture, those who are older would know that his colonial name before he renamed himself and embedded himself in the culture of his Africanism was Stokely Carmichael. Few in the diaspora, few post-colonialists have been more an activist for freedom, for change, for empowerment, for emancipation, for liberation than Brother Kwame Ture. So that any recognition of Brother Kwame Ture, though late, is late deserving. If it's a street and not a program or course being taught from primary school as to what Brother Kwame Ture represented and represents, and if what he represented and represents was inculcated in the education, in the process of our re-education, which has not been in motion, full motion, we are still being educated in this colonial dependence, we would not be where we are. So that I want to recognize the acknowledgement, but to name a street and have a name up there, and maybe 98% of the generation or people viewing it, seeing it, hearing about it different than a ceremony. I think what I'm not distracted with is this Caribbean or incumbency PR exercise. Want the grasp the social media. But let's look at the depth and content of it. What would Brother Kwame Ture want? A street named after him, or that his life struggle is represented in the curricula, in the education, in the psyche of the young generation to prevent them from endorsing where we are? To get rid of Columbus statue. I always remember when I'm in the city of Port of Spain, to look at it when I have to pass there and wonder how could Dr. Eric Williams, who was one of the four most intellectuals and academics become Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and allow one of the most imposing statues, monuments in Trinidad during his entire tenure. Again, I have to be fair, one of the most seminal work on anti-colonialism or capturing colonialism is Capitalism and Slavery, written by him. Yet, for his entire tenure, the monument, the psychological monument of this imposing figure in Port of Spain remained there under Eric Williams. So that at long last. But what is that? That is not even tokenism, as Malcolm says. Those to me are distractions. What is most important to me is the question of this horrid campaign of dispossession, of economic enslavement that most of the national government policies and programs represent. You change the street name to Kwame Ture, one of the most revolutionary representative of the diaspora, the suffering people of African descent, one of the most conscious and enlightened. And what? And you remove Columbus statue, and what? But the economy is controlled by a clique and by foreign enterprises if the days of plantation slavery, and that the Trinidadians and the Tobagonians are more displaced than before the monument was removed and the street was renamed. I think these exercises, as significant they are, the urgency we have, and more so in the era of Trumpism, I think the Caribbean, you're going to hear me beat this drum. I am absolutely disappointed with the intelligentsia, if you want to call it that, the academics, the scholars, the universities of the Caribbean. On a per capita basis, on the world stage, and Caribbean's academic scholarship qualification and numbers of universities will be in the top tier on a per capita basis. But where does it put us? Are we better placed with hundreds of some of the finest minds? You can call them William DeMass, Arthur Lewis down the road, Clyde Thomas down the road, Mr. McIntyre, and so down the road. Are the Caribbean society, the economy, is in a comfortable place of Caribbean ownership? Has the Caribbean been advanced, be more empowered, economic ownership? You have independence, but you have less economic ownership. The major businesses and enterprises, you hardly own them. What this scholarship, this body of thought, this brilliancy, what has it done for Caribbean empowerment ownership? I want to tell you nothing. We owned more before so many scholars had been produced in the Caribbean, the indigenous people. Let me speak for Antigua and Barbuda. More ancestral children owned land, large quantities of land, who did not finish a secondary school, who did not enter a secondary school. And that the largest landowners after colonialism, 3,000 acres, 108 square miles, were Black Antiguans. The largest business ownership in the community from which I come, Villa and Point, small community, small. You can walk around in half an hour. They had 100 businesses, and all were owned by Antiguans and Barbadians, by the villagers, be it tanners, be it whatever it is. Let's look at the macro Caribbean. What is it that we own? What is it that we produce? Every island of the Caribbean have what we call cassie tree. And yet, to clean the remainder or the remnants of our food from our tooth or teeth, we have to reach for a Chinese plastic toothpick. You're going to tell me our scholarship? We couldn't have a factory, cut the cassie tree, and the little toothpick, we produce them, some artistic style, and mint them and put some little sweet thing at the end. We had to import toothpicks. We can't produce toothpicks with all these acacia trees and all these trees around the Caribbean. What is it that we own? Which of the economy of the Caribbean that two of the line items are carried from the profit of tourism or any industry that's owned by foreigners? What part of the economy that we own? In Antigua, 80% up to about 1981, the eve of independence, the major wholesalers and retailers were black Antiguans. The leading restaurants, every community, 90% of the businesses were owned by the people, of the descendants of the ancestral children. With all these scholarships, all these academics, all these universities, all these graduations of hundreds of people, where is the Caribbean today with that? Has it advanced us? Can we speak of emancipation when we are more dependent? When our assets are being given away under the guise of incentives, in perpetuity, indefinitely, infinitum? That's the kind of concession, duty-free here, tax concessions, and we don't give those concessions to indigenous business, most of the ancestral children. So that the whole question of looking at the Caribbean is in the worst position ever. And what is frightening, we have had something unprecedented in our history post-colonial, post the mimicry of colonialism. We have something called Trumpism. They never had this kind in any conscious world after World War I and II, where authoritarianism has become state terrorism, blackmail, which demonstrates not only hegemonic arrogance and unilateralism, how entire world economy, how an entire civilization is on a siege. So if that is happening to developed countries, what of these little microscopic states that has already committed most important assets, their land and seas, giving it away under some so-called development? You see our predicament? You see why I am not distracted with any road or sign? If you have an injury on your foot, but you have an injury in your head, an accident, or an internal injury, and you go to the hospital, the doctors usually tell you they will treat, if your foot is broken, they'll leave that for last. They're going to treat the most urgent ones, the injury to your brain or to your internal organ, the injury of repairing the roads, renaming the roads, moving the monument. But our most urgent crisis that we are in the full flight of being recolonized. We are being dispossessed on the so-called development of incumbent governments because they want to win election, they want to win votes. And nothing comes back to the people. We are less empowered. That is the reality that I would like us to focus on. The Caribbean reality. Caribbean citizens are being displaced, they're being marginalized, and they're not aware of. What discussion the CARICOM had recently that they've shared with the Caribbean people that they are now more enlightened because of Trumpism, the threat of tariffs, and so forth. This is the impact, the visa threat that people going to university. I heard Foreign Minister, former Prime Minister Denzel Douglas commenting on some posts that some of the petition students have now who are in attending university have been deprived, or if the visa taken from them and they have one more year to go. Now these are the realities. How much education with the state of the art means of communication, how have we utilized, how have the leadership, when they have these CARICOM meetings, have they had a public opening ceremony, 1-day session of 4 hours, hear the Caribbean people speak to them, or they're still in this little, class? What is the relation to Caribbean existence and CARICOM? Where are we in relation to ownership?
Respect. Brother Akko, you have 8 minutes.
Okay, so a very important point, Brother Alister, which I need to emphasize. He glossed it over. But the fact that we have all these trees in the Caribbean, we don't even make a toothpick to clean our teeth. That tells you the state of our economies. That we can't, with all the trees and forests we have, we don't make a toothpick. So the other article that we have is called Gun Crime, a Deeper Cost to Society. And this comes out of Barbados. Very importantly, a lot of gun crimes are occurring throughout the Caribbean. In St. Lucia, in Trinidad, in Barbados, in Jamaica. It used to be at one time we thought it was only Jamaica, now it has spread. And this is a very important article about the cost of gun crime to our societies. So it begins with the financial and human cost of gun violence in Barbados extend far beyond the rising death toll and is placing an unsustainable burden on the already stretched public health system, says former Minister of Health, Donville Innes. Innes, the health minister from 2008 to 2013, is now urging authorities to treat gun violence as a major public health crisis, suggesting it had far-reaching implications for national development. Right? Innes said Barbadians were right to be alarmed at the rising number of firearm-related murders, but caution that focusing solely on fatality statistics overlook the deeper, more pervasive toll of gun crime on society. Barbadians are rightfully concerned over the number of gun-related violence that has permeated our society. He said, naturally, we focus on the number of deaths directly attributed to such violence. That statistic is easily used by most persons to drive fear into our hearts, score political points, or plan responses. However, there is a perhaps more compelling statistic that we should all be equally concerned about: the consequences of such violence to our public healthcare system. The former member of parliament highlighted that for every person shot and killed, there could be 5 others who survived the injuries, with significant implications for the healthcare sector and society at large. The reality is that there are costs related to the emergency personnel who are called to save a life at the scene and to transport the person to the accident and emergency department, right? The care provided by nurses, doctors, and other members of the emergency room team and diagnostic equipment used. It is noted that such victims might need emergency or urgent surgeries, hence necessitating the use of operating theaters and personnel that may have otherwise been scheduled for other patients. Herein lies a very human and financial cost to our society, he noted. He warned that delayed treatment for other critical patients, such as cancer sufferers or cardiac emergencies, could lead to worsened outcomes or even death, all because of the resources being diverted to treat gunshot victims. Some people die as a result of such delays or can find that their quality of life is further diminished, he said. The former minister said 13 years ago, preliminary figures estimated that the cost of treating a single gunshot victim who survived was around $75,000. Today, he believes that number has nearly tripled. I would estimate that each gunshot victim is placing approximately $200,000 in cost to the state. Whatever the actual numbers are, these are taxpayers' dollars that we cannot sustain. It simply means that other persons are being denied healthcare interventions that are needed. He also pointed to a broader societal cost: long-term rehabilitation, disability benefits, psychological trauma, family disruptions, lost productivity, the rise of retaliatory violence, and the need to retrofit homes to accommodate victims. Perhaps the next time some fool decides to arm themselves with a firearm and shoot other persons, reflect first on the fact that your grandmother who raised you and cared for you may die because your victim stopped her from getting the care she needs for cervical cancer. And I will stop there. I think that is a critical point to stop to discuss this, because the context in which this brother raised this, I never saw it until I started to read it. That the cost of violence to our elders, gun violence to our society, and the burden on the economic system. I would like Brother Alister to intervene and comment on this here.
We only have 2 minutes to the break, so let me go ahead and take the break.
Yes.
Come back and give Brother Alister more time to share on that. But that's one big connection. I never make it out before you said that either. So, and where did that come from?
Barbados.
From Barbados. We'll take a second break of the morning and then we'll come back with Brother Alister commenting on that Caribbean news piece. Break time.
Tired of replacing light bulbs? LEDs are what you need. LEDs last up to 30,000 hours. That's 30 times longer than incandescent bulbs, and up to 8 times longer than compact fluorescents. So less changing and less trash. Planet Earth thanks you. And the LED experts at Brothers Habet and Habet will help you find the best LED solution with colors for every room and mood, starting as low as $6.95. You can even get LED strips for home, office, and industrial use. So say goodbye to fluorescent tubes forever. And because they use up to 90% less energy, you save money. Money you can spend on other things. So head to Brothers Habet or Habet today. You can also call, email, or Facebook us. Have a brilliant day.
En Atlantic Bank, tu comodidad es nuestra prioridad. Nuestro centro de contacto está diseñado para mejorar tu experiencia bancaria. Con una amplia gama de opciones de servicio al cliente, ahorras tiempo y esfuerzo. Puedes llamar fácilmente para bloquear o desbloquear tus tarjetas de débito y crédito, realizar consultas de cuentas y acceder a información detallada de tus tarjetas. Ya sea que necesites asistencia con la banca en línea, apoyo para comercios o consultas generales, nuestro equipo está listo para ayudarte. Para mayor comodidad, si todos los operadores están ocupados, puedes dejar tu número y un operador te devolverá la llamada lo antes posible para asegurarse de que recibas el apoyo que necesitas. Para mayor seguridad, es posible que necesitemos verificar tu identidad con un conjunto de preguntas sencillas. Recuerda, Atlantic Bank nunca solicitará tu nombre de tu usuario ni contraseña de Atlantic Online por llamada telefónica, mensaje de texto o correo electrónico, asegurando que tu información personal permanezca segura y protegida. Nuestro equipo de apoyo está disponible de lunes a viernes, de 8 a.m. a 6 p.m. en inglés y en español. Simplemente marca al 223-1212. Esta es la línea dedicada para nuestro centro de contacto. Atlantic Bank se compromete a brindarte un servicio excepcional y las herramientas que necesitas para administrar tus finanzas de manera conveniente y segura. Aprovecha al máximo nuestro servicio del centro de contacto.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
In our world that's always changing, one thing stays the same.
Our promise as Smart Belize to keep you connected.
Connected to the moments, the people, and the future that matter most.
With every new tower, our service upgrades, and every new smile, we're keeping our promise in building more than a network.
We're building a future, a family as Smart Belize. From Punta Gorda to Corozal, we are here not just as a network, but as your partner in progress.
We have grown significantly over the past 20 years, and we just keep growing. Thank you for placing your trust in us. We remain dedicated to providing meaningful connections that bring value in every way that matters to you. We continue to bring people together.
Tired of replacing light bulbs? LEDs are what you need. LEDs last up to 30,000 hours. That's 30 times longer than incandescent bulbs, and up to 8 times longer than compact fluorescents. So less changing and less trash. Planet Earth thanks you. And the LED experts at Brothers Habet and Habet will help you find the best LED solution with colors for every room and mood, starting as low as $6.95. You can even get LED strips for home, office, and industrial use. So say goodbye to fluorescent tubes forever. And because they use up to 90% less energy, you save money. Money you can spend on other things. So head to Brothers Habet or Habet today. You can also call, email, or Facebook us. Have a brilliant day.
Guatemala, this a the we have figure. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me what maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, bad.
Back to Sunday Review. Can be like kind of a speed run because we have to get Brother Alister Thomas from Antigua to give his 2 cents on the last news item Brother Akka just shared, and then Brother Akka want to share one other Caribbean news story. Go, Brother Alister.
First thing I want to say that in this season of increased crimes, our Prime Minister here, Gaston Brown, on public media, you know, he has a, I think, either Academy Award or Guinness Book placement for uttering the most diatribe and ignorance of any leader on social media. He said about a year ago, when the upsurge, particularly of young people who are displaced and marginalized, began to react, and I predicted that about 11 years ago in a New Year's message, that if we continue to alienate them and to take their resources and their opportunities, they're going to respond in ways that are going to be numbing to the society. So I'm not surprised. But he said, Prime Minister Gaston Brown, that advising the youth that in the case where they have hot weapons of crime, to get rid of them. I will leave that there. A leader said that. And if there's any doubt, I'll get the clip and share it about Akko so that you can play kind of twisted leadership, and that's why we are where we are. But let me go to the question of violence. It's not new. It has just has increased. Why has it increased? If we continue to look at the tree and not the forest, we will miss it. The largest doses of violence, or the introduction of violence to these Caribbean islands, to Africa, is the Europeans when they came to colonize. We experienced 400 years of the worst violence. Gun violence, whip violence, gibbeting violence, everything, cutting off head, everything. So we have been culturalized in the trauma of violence by the Europeans. That is what our resistance meant. That was the experience to resist bondage. So that's our history. But we go to, on a global scale, World War I, World War II, massive doses of violence being used to advance the interests of imperialism and capitalism. We fast forward when the anti-colonial movement, anti-imperialist movement began to take its toll in Africa and the Caribbean. The European countries, after they used massive doses of violence to destroy Africa, history, culture, the modern father civilization, the Benin Empire and so forth, as you know, as we speak, there are hundreds and thousands of artifacts that are making millions of dollars in every part of Europe museum. Some of the crimes of, what do you call it?
Humanity.
The rewards of their criminal activities after destroyed our heritage, our religion, our spirituality. So that's our experience of violence. In the Caribbean, we didn't have any serious episode with gun violence and knife violence. Little thing my Don John and what's his name? Blakey would tell you that, little pan thing, and so, you're not going up pan again, little thing, cultural, temporary thing. But on a societal level, it was not there. It was introduced by the Europeans and North Americans. And the modern violence, which is attached to what we're experiencing, had a lot to do for me when the CIA and the imperialist powers collaborated to stop the consciousness movement, the independence, the genuine independence movement in Africa and the Caribbean. Not the colonial independence, of which I spoke about. All the Caribbean islands had a constitution, or took a constitution that committed their leadership and the people to subservience and allegiance to colonialism. When the Black Power movement came, they began to plant drugs, crack cocaine, and so forth, to distract us. They succeeded and infiltrated the Black Power movement and the even in North America, and the Rastafari movement, Black Power movement. All the movement were infiltrated. But then something happened after Manley emerged in Jamaica with a somewhat socialist-oriented ideology, which is different from the challenged, the status quo, the continuation, this masking of freedom, emancipation, elections, and so forth, and the by-election and the brig elections and all of that kind of things that are happening in Haiti with Baby Doc and so forth. They saw a threat, and an awakening was taking place. Bob Marley was ringing the Caribbean message of uprising and revolution and the other conscious brothers and sisters. And so they began to import large quantities of weapons and drugs into Jamaica. In fact, after the meeting with the then Secretary of State, Sir Henry Kissinger, at that time the most perhaps influential man, and some people thought he was more influential than the president, but certainly most influential diplomat, went to Jamaica to have a meeting with Manley to direct him what to do and what not to do. That is, this policy of trying to empower the people, the grassroots, from the grassroots down, or grassroots up. And he recognized he was not getting any kind of response, and that Manley had gone the direction of not being a surrogate for colonialism, imperialism, but wanted a new part, and took the non-aligned movement part, which is the largest nations in the world, and with some of the socialist and communist countries that were a part of it. They set upon ensuring that Michael Manley's economy would be on a mind, not beside influencing, not influence that they control in the World Bank and IMF, to create the hardest conditionalities and terms for Manley's economy, so he could not survive. So they did not want the experiment of empowering the people from the roots down, in that making sure a greater percentage of the wealth is distributed, as opposed to what existed, this elite having it. They decided they would get rid of Manley. So they not only got international institutions to provide it the hardest term condition for loans, for investment, and ran the investors away. But they then launched, after what's his name? Henry Kissinger left, the amount of guns and drugs, most of it were manufactured in the United States, the weapons. You have to look and see where they originate. They were not Uzis. They were not, what do we call them? Kalashnikov, Russian weapon, main weapon. They were all AK-47s and so forth, and guns that were produced by the American companies. They set about to launch this violence in the Caribbean, in Jamaica. And it did not stop. And in accompanying it was the drugs, because they wanted the Caribbean never to develop itself. The same we did with Haiti. Take away Haiti experience, take over Haiti, never acknowledge their independence, take over their treasury, take away their gold, force them to pay for their enslavement. So they did the same by launching weapons and violence in the Caribbean. That's the genesis of that. That large quantity, the CIA did that against Manley. It spread, because where you have drugs, and where you're taking away the economic ownership and rights and taking away the assets, and children can see that they're not going to be able to buy a piece of land and so forth. They have to have big money, because a piece of land now, the speculators set the price. It's unachievable. Quarter-acre house plot is $1 million. They say the only way you can get that is by illegal means, by running drugs, large quantity of money. So they force them in a culture. But at the same time, where is the drugs and the guns originating? They go hand in hand. It is part of the imperialist plot. It's a part of the anti-Caribbean, anti-progressive movement that launched the weaponry. Now, it is now seen a new rise by seeing this upsurge, because they created a culture among the Caribbean people that when they look at the governmental opportunities, they realize, vast majority of people realize it's not there for them. But at the same time, we had a brother, and Brother Aku can call the brother's name. There's evidence that some of the business people and politicians are involved in the importation. My brother from Trinidad, I had him on my program, because money is in it. Money is in the.
Brother Darius?
Yeah, Darius. Yeah.
Brother Darius Figueroa.
Darius. Yes. Done tremendous work research to show the nexus, the link between the gun violence and the business, and certain influential people, as Sparrow had put it so succinctly, These good citizens are the architects of economic slavery. A lot of those good citizens in business owners, politicians, are also the genesis, the incubator. And so the young people, they get in the money through the selling the arms, and at the same time, the drugs.
Also, don't forget the cultural question, the violence in American films, you know, like John Wick, and which has made violence almost like a style. That's an important part.
An industry, yes, it's an export, a psychological export, which has one of the most tremendous impact on young people. And now it's not, you don't have to go in the cinema now to get it or on your screen. Yeah. It's in your hands. That violent product, the industry of export of violence, psychological violence. So that every child is being exposed to the culture of violence in his hands. Because every child have a device, a cell phone that access the movies of violence, and nearly everything that you have there is this massive dose of violence. So yes, that's a profound point too. How the psychological impact or incubatory stage for violence is being handed to our Caribbean citizens unimpeded, because you cannot control the social media. You cannot control young people going and seeing the violence in all forms. So that yes, all these history that I have related to you, and in addition now that the industry or the profession of crime and violence and gun are being given freely to all our children, all our members of our society. They're vulnerable to it in their hands by having a cell phone. It's unimpeded, unedited.
Respect, brother.
And there's no means to check it.
Thanks, Brother Alister. Brother Akko, I could try to get that last story in quickly.
Yeah, so the last story is out of Jamaica. The headline is Jamaicans encouraged not to burn plastics. That's an environmental issue. As concerns grow globally about the impact of plastics on human health and the environment, Jamaicans are being strongly encouraged to avoid burning plastics and to make more informed consumer choices by selecting products free of microplastics. The call comes as the government enters the final phase of a single-use plastic ban, which now includes personal care and cosmetic products containing microbeads or microplastics. The move aligns with increasing international scrutiny over the effects of plastic waste, not only on ecosystems, but also on human health. According to the Chief Technical Director for Development, Planning, Environmental Policy and Management in the Ministry of Economic Growth, burning plastics such as bottles, containers, or packaging materials can release highly toxic chemicals, including dioxins and furans, which are hazardous to both the environment and respiratory health. While local data on the long-term health effects of microplastics remain limited, international research from the World Health Organization and other global bodies has linked microplastic ingestion and inhalation to potential health issues, particularly for vulnerable populations such as children, the elderly, and those with respiratory conditions. The use of microplastics is particularly concerning in coastal nations like Jamaica, where plastic waste in waterways can degrade into microplastic particles. These particles are consumed by fish and marine species and can eventually make their way back to the human consumers. Inhaling the fumes from burning plastic is not just unpleasant, it's dangerous, and every time we wash off certain cosmetics, we are sending microplastic directly into our environment. The call to action is part of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. So I would end here and let Brother Alister comment on this, because I think this is an important thing for all of us in the Caribbean, this issue of plastics and the environment.
And before Brother Alister jumped in, I just want to be very clear here. The United Black Association for Development Educational Foundation does not support CARICOM's so-called 10-point reparation plan. The African reparation action that we support from our sisters and brothers out of the UK on the Stop the Mangamese campaign is to say that the harm has continued with capitalism, neocolonialism. So the harm continues. So before we can think about reparations, which means repair, and the biggest part, the repair of self, mind, body, spirit, is that the harm needs to stop. And there's a three-pronged approach to it. The first being cognitive knowledge, because it's not only European worldview and knowledge that is of value. To repair ourselves, we have to go back to Mama Africa and look at our traditional worldview, spiritual systems and engagement. And so the first part is cognitive repair. The second part is environmental repair. African and indigenous people always see Mama Africa, the environment, as our sisters and brothers. They are part of our family, our kinfolk. And the third part is reparatory justice for the other material harm. So being very clear that there's another way to look at African reparations beyond politicians and scholars and world leaders determining what's best for us. States can never do that kind of, the state enslave our people. So it's up to the people to get other knowledge systems like conversations on Sunday Review to then decide what's best for us. We who are suffering and have been suffering and continue to suffer must come together and determine how do we best repair ourselves to leave Mama Earth in a healthier space for our unborn children. Brother Alister, go ahead there.
Quickly, I want to say that the question of the gun violence, I don't want it to be left in any listener mind that I'm saying it's not an issue that we can address. It's an issue that we can address, and I have no doubt that we can reverse it with a, I would say, more concerted anti-violence education in our schools, and also to the impact of the effect of social media. But we are not having the educational programs in the institutions, in the forums, in the media that is required to put a counterbalance. We can counterbalance it, and we must, because what it is doing is consuming our children, our society, and bringing fear, affecting the innocent, not only in business and health, the economy, but also the psyche of the Caribbean people, the state to which our violence is. So it's an urgent matter that needs to be addressed, and people who are creating some of the greatest violence are not some of the incumbent political leaders. They can be the ones who will be leading this. I think it needs a grassroots intervention. The question of plastic. It's interesting how the transnational and conglomerates can create a problem, and then they slip away and becomes a national campaign, and individuals are passing the buck. The environment. I mean, you take of the ecological damage. The greatest ecological damage done to the Caribbean has been by colonialism. They had to deforest most of the Caribbean islands to make sure their sugar industry provides for them. So that the first major impact on the environment in the Caribbean, almost through every island, especially British colonialism and Spanish, where cane and so were being cultivated, and sugar and tobacco, with this indiscriminate environmental damage, almost scarring the island to provide for lands to be cultivated. Plastic. DuPont. Many years were the leading company providing and manufacturing plastic. And you had no talk about, up to now, you don't hear any sort of compensatory approach. The amount of health issues, the perhaps millions of people that suffer as a result of the plastic that DuPont produced. But after all these companies, conglomerates, now they're trying to get into it, now they're getting conscious to it. But the question is it an opportunistic campaign? Should we allow them to lead the campaign, or we should lead a campaign, as Sister YaYa have been indicating in her disassociation with the Caribbean Reparation Commission? And I'm in that same position too, because that's an elite club, but not representing me. There's no serious confrontation with me. They handpick their Uncle Toms for most part. And let me say this, that the plastic campaign is a serious one. It is in the environment, it's in the sea, in the ocean. They have one of those campaign issue now telling you how many miles of plastic just floating in some parts of, I think it's the Pacific Ocean, that's created by various nations. But those who are responsible, plastic is a inorganic. It's a manufactured product. Those who were majorly responsible in the beginning to launch all these plastics around the world, what liability? They're getting off scot-free. You're redirecting it onto some environmental, and even on the international environmental campaign, you hear them now say they're pulling out of this organization, United States pulling out, when many of the culprits or the cause, those who caused this plastic pandemic, were American companies before the Chinese came in for decades. You want to go back to Henry Ford, maybe rubber, but plastic and all of those things, they create that. How do we establish this multi-campaign that they don't want to put on the table? The companies that are making billions, have made billions or even trillions, like DuPont, why should they get away? They have caused serious harm, irreparable harms, and death. How do we ensure, as citizens of the Caribbean, that the agenda that they put forward to us about plastic, that we now, the responsibility, we are negligent? But we don't manufacture plastic for most part. Most of the things they bring in, plastics. Most of the things that were introduced to us before we get to the Chinese market, all of them responsible. How do we get a collective responsibility? Because when I look at these international environmental campaigns, these things are so structured and manipulated. And if you follow the Trump era, many of these note that they hold them liable, so major culprits to create this health hazard, and a serious hazard to the environment, because we are environmental in the Caribbean, that the marine life is a part of our lives, and a lot of the marine life is being affected by this plastic. So when we ingest it, I do not think that the hands have been wrapped sufficiently. I think we need more community, more village, outside of this state structured control, because it seems they're being given the script, just as they were given a constitution that's supposed to be independent. They're given script, and they don't even read the script properly, and they come and regurgitate it. I think we need to revive or to create some indigenous Caribbean movement, spontaneous, grassroots, because most of these things are exercise, so that they cover it and they hide hidden behind a lot of meetings and discussion, but nothing really happening. With the plastic, what serious thing is happening when you say you're banning this, but you're still bringing in all the plates and all the utensils that's sold by the haberdashery, sold by a lot of the big interest owners and people who fund political parties. They're the major import, all the bowl and plastic and all the different things that are coming in. How can you say you're banning plastic bags, but nearly 80% of the things still coming in, have a ban on those? Somebody playing game with us. And we, the Caribbean people, are very intelligent. I think the masses of the Caribbean people got to realize that a lot of the institutions that have become Caribbean institutions are not representative of the masses of the Caribbean. They're representative of foreign interests, their special interests, and a lot of them associated with the incumbency. So we have to find that independence of making sure we're looking out for our best interests, be it in plastic, be it in violence. The Caribbean people need to get up, the conscious ones, and say, you know what, we need to launch this mass Caribbean movement. And I wish to be a part of it. Maybe this is a part of the launch, YaYa. But I know Brother Mutota is a part of it. We need to popularize it more.
Big respect. When I'm going to listen to, I remember I read something where I said, I thought this year that researchers find alarmingly high levels of microplastics in human brains, and concentrations are growing over time. We're just about out of time, so each one get to a minute of closing remarks. Since you got a guest, Brother Alister Thomas from the Twin Islands of Antigua and Barbuda, you have a minute to give your final thoughts to our listeners, viewers, those streaming online on XTV local channel and Creme Reader channel. 1 minute, Brother Alister.
First, let me thank you, Sister YaYa, and my brother Mutota, who is a part of our movement. And to the Caribbean people, there is an urgency for you to intervene. They're sitting back and waiting. A lot of the people who you're following are the people who are misleading us. We need a new liberation movement of the Caribbean, a new emancipation movement. And I just want to say that to those of you who are listening, I invite you to listen to Caribbean into the 21st Century on ZDK Radio every Saturday, 10 to 12. And I say to the Caribbean people, we need to urgently intervene in our own affairs. We have the power, we have the means. We do not have to wait for the status quo. But indifference is a high price to pay.
Big respect. Can you give the channel where listeners and viewers can hear your program? Antigua and Barbuda, 2 hours ahead of Belize. So right now, Belize, like say 12 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, the Antigua and Barbuda. So give the channel again and the time and the day of the week when they could tune in, Brother Alister.
It's 97.1 on Facebook, ZDK Radio, Radio ZDK, 97.1 FM.
Day and what time?
10 a.m. to 12 noon.
On Saturday?
Every Saturday. And we invite you all. And as I said again, I want to compliment you, Sister YaYa, and let us expand this more. Let us not just be talk shop. We have had a lot of talk. We have a lot of documents and papers written by some of our finest people, but we are hustling, or they're hustling us into slavery and recolonization. We need that resistance movement to be active, to be functional, to be effective. Let us use these media to launch the countermeasure. Thank you, and have a wonderful day for all you listeners.
And I just want to say that talking has a space. We need to have a
definitely.
counter to the narrative out there. So that not just about talking. Before we act, we want to make sure we study together, we learn, and we know who we are, because we can't give what we not live. You have to live the life where we encourage other people for liberate themselves. So I hear you, brother. I hear you, brother. I got 1 minute.
Again, thanks to Brother Alister, and very salient points he made about the need for Caribbean people to move to a state of liberation. I think that is, we have to understand that emancipation was just a stepping stone towards liberation. And liberation is when we control our destiny and determine our sovereignty. And we are not at that stage yet. I think one of the phrase or the terms that coined that move towards liberation was by Marichaud, the great Albert Marichaud from Grenada, when he said the West Indies must be West Indian. In other words, we need an indigenous movement of Caribbean people, informed by our own civilizations, informed by our history, and a movement that would lead us toward liberation. That is what I think is the task and the challenge that lies ahead for us. Even as we celebrate emancipation on August 1st, we need to see emancipation as a stepping stone towards our liberation.
Big respect, Brother Akko, Mutota. And today, Sister Penelope Casasola, 81st Earth Strong. Happy Earth Day, Sister Penny, original United Black Association for Development member and a sister at that. And today is also day 3 of United Black Association for Development Educational Foundation campaign to pressure the state cabinet, Minister Holiday Karimusa, that August 1st should be renamed African People Emancipation Day. In 2021, when they give that public and bank holiday, as well as the one from October 12th, when they change it from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Resistance Day, they never just name it Resistance Day. They name the people and say, know who are the people and what they do. Indigenous People Resistance Day. Likewise, it no matter to me what the rest of the Caribbean do, that Belize. You have to advocate for the state change August 1st to African People Emancipation Day, so we know who are the group of people that was given legal liberation from physical chattel enslavement in English-speaking territories. Big thanks again, Brother Alister Thomas from Antigua and Barbuda. Big thanks,
Thank
Brother
you.
Akko, Trinidad and Tobago. The security guard today, that is Shane Flowers. At XTV, we have our technical director, Sister Christy Flowers. Big thanks, Christy. I don't know if Christy is there with you today. I don't know if Christina's studio. Christine, welcome to work today. And then downstairs at Creme Radio, we have Larry Guerrero, known as Larry G. This show will repeat at 5:30 Belize time on the local channel. You could go to XTV Belize Facebook, XTV Belize YouTube, and share the link, share the link, share the link. This is how we build knowledge. We have to push back on the oftentimes singular narrative of our people. that we live with the struggle and the sacrifices every day. So we are the expert. None of them people with colonial papers we call degree and political leaders were loyal to party and not people, loyal to profit and not people. We the people, only we want to save ourselves. So we have to individually and collectively make up our mind to start to study and build with knowledge and start to create trust among each other within the entire area known as the Caribbean region. So till next Sunday, only the people want to save the people.
Only the people save the people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
People who love them country bad, love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, love them homeland, will never give it up to another nation. This stuff we we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This stuff we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots, all people.